Hi guys, so today's video is going to be my September wrap-up part 1. So I'd split my TBR up into my regular September TBR and then my fall themed TBR, and that is what we're going to be talking about today, are the fall books. I liked last time I did my wrap-up where I let you know books I've DNF'd, books I'm currently still reading, but my thoughts on them so far, and then the books that I've completed. I'm going to follow that structure again. Start with the DNF, start with the negative, and kind of go into the positive. The DNF would be the Devouring Gray. The setup for this one is that we follow a girl who her father died a long time ago, her sister recently died in a car accident, and now her and her mother are having to move back to her mother's hometown, and her mom is very kind of stoic, doesn't seem to have a lot of emotions, to which our main character is like, ugh, mom sucks. When getting to this small town though, there is definitely some creepy stuff happening, and it seems to be involving our main character very quickly. There is some bizarre, almost like another reality with this creepy forest. And the reason I DNF'd it is that I just could not follow the logic of that main character who is coming into this town. She is somebody who's never had any exposure to magic before, and she just kind of takes it in stride. I mean, she just is like, oh yeah, I woke up next to this dead body in the woods. I don't know how I got there, but like, I don't want to tell my mom. She'll probably just think I'm going crazy. And I'm like, you woke up in the middle of the forest next to a dead body, freaked out. You have no idea how you got there. And then I won't tell mom because mom will think I need therapy and that I'm imagining things from my sister's death. And I'm just like, well, okay, if that's how far your brain is going, then you probably do need to talk to a professional. But then also, if it's not your brain doing this and you did just wake up in the middle of a creepy forest next to a dead body and the dead body was heavily mutilated, then you also should tell somebody. There's a part where they're kind of explaining the situation to her, and then she like seems not afraid, and one of them tells her, wow, you don't seem too freaked out about this. And she's like, my sister died. I'm not afraid of anything. And it's like, your sister died in a car accident, though. She didn't die because of some weird, crazy paranormal stuff. I didn't feel like anything was that scary because everybody was so dumb. Plus, I gotta say, I've never read a book that, that mentions what people look like so bluntly, and it was a little strange, I gotta say. So at first I thought, oh, I need to check myself. I'm just so used to the fact that most of the time characters in the books I read are white, and so when it tells me a character is white, then I'm just, you know, it seems weird to me because of what I'm used to. I need to check myself on this because the character, the girl who's from somewhere else, she like comes into this diner and it describes it as there's nobody else in the diner, there's just two guys, and it's like there were two white boys in the diner, and I'm like, oh, okay, so like this character she's not white, all right, and I'm just not used to people being called white in books because of me, you know, being white and being used to people being white in books, whatever. But then later, they are thinking about her, and they're like, that white girl, and I'm like, so everybody's white and everybody's calling each other white? I don't like my descriptions quite that blunt as it is, but when done in that way, it also felt like a little clunky for me because maybe you could say like, their skin was very fair. Something like that, but it'd just be like the two white boys in the diner, and then you go to their point of view and like the white girl that just came in. Like, there's just three white people then? So bottom line is I DNF'd it. Switching to a couple of books that I have started and haven't quite finished yet, but want to give you brief thoughts so far. We have Ninth Rain and Bone Witch. Please excuse the fact that my dog chewed on this a long time ago. We'll start with, did I say Ninth Rain? Ninth House. I'm going to talk about Ninth Rain later. I found the beginning quite dry. I wasn't particularly invested, and spoiler alert, I haven't liked a lot of the books that were on my fall TBR, so not my official fall TBR, but like my before fall TBR that I'm discussing with you today. I ultimately decided I wanted to put this down and try picking up a few other things, not because I thought it was terrible, but because I wasn't particularly gripped by the beginning, and I had not been enjoying so many of the things that I was like, I don't want a reading slump to come on, so I took a break from it. But I will say where I left off was starting to pick up. I'm also kind of waiting a little bit for Bone Witch to pick up. I was intrigued by the beginning of this. We follow a girl who discovers she has necromancy powers, and she brings her brother back from the dead on accident, but when she does this, she is then whisked away by another necromancer so that she can learn to harness her powers. Their society, despite there being a decent amount of magic users, they just kind of think that necromancy is a little not great. It's going back and forth between her in present day and her in the past, but you are more following her in the past right now, which is very interesting, instead of the other way around. So it's a little dry in a sense, but not in a terrible way or anything. I think it's just a slow beginning. Now to the books that I have completed, of which there are 4. I think I'll start off with Iron King. This is technically considered a YA book, but it is an older YA book, and I think that the tone of it felt more like middle grade in my opinion, with the occasional F-bomb thrown in, which I feel like that's not even very common in young adults, but it felt like middle grade with the occasional curse word. And then also just like references to things that are pretty violent, like the whole idea of there being mythological creatures that might seduce you and take you against your will. Otherwise, I would say it's kind of middle grade in tone. It has to do with fae. It definitely has creepy fae, if you're somebody who likes scary fae or tricksters and they try to manipulate people. I think you will enjoy that element of this. We follow our main character, who is a human, and her little half-human brother. Okay, he's her half-brother, who happens to also be human. He's not half-human. So it's her half-brother, who is human, who is little, is taken by the fae that she did not previously know existed, and then she ends up going into the fae world to try and rescue him. I did like the determination of the character. I liked that she wanted so badly to help her little brother, but I didn't feel like she progressed in a way that I liked throughout the book. So I was forgiving of her making dumb decisions early on, but then sometimes she would be really clever and work her way out of something, and then other times she would be really dumb again, and I was like, girl, didn't you learn anything? I also was not a fan of the romance in this book. Characters just kind of fall head over heels for no reason at all. I legitimately don't know why they're drawn to each other. There was another character that I thought, oh, okay, this could be cute, and then it wasn't that, and it was one of those situations where it's like, okay, so you thought that that was a good guy, but let me tell you about their deep, dark past, and it turns out they're not that good after all. And the only reason that it feels like a character wouldn't like that person is because they have to have actually been terrible. It can't just be, like, we're not compatible. On top of all of that, the story as to what made that character so terrible was not that crazy to me. However, I do feel like the beginning of the book was actually quite creepy, especially for a book that has a younger tone. I was legitimately like, this is scary. I thought the concept of the antagonist was very fascinating. I thought, wow, okay, that's cool. If you are looking for a story that follows trickster fae, is creepy but young in tone, I think that you will probably be able to forgive the romance element because it is more, I think, younger in tone, so you don't exactly expect like, biggest ship ever. That takes us into Wicked Saints. When we first start, we follow this girl who's living in a monastery. She's lived there her whole life, and you get bits and pieces about how clearly she is important to the enemy because she has magical powers. The magic seems very interesting. It has a necklace where she can like touch different beads and communicate with different gods and goddesses and basically ask them like, will you help me please? And then they grant her different powers. That magic system made it so that the stakes unfortunately never felt that high to me, because it all came down to like, are the gods and goddesses feeling moody today? Or are they going to help you? The other part of the magic system comes from the enemies, who don't want to rely on the whims of the gods and goddesses. So they use their own blood to draw magic, and they are seen as terrible people by the main character. She kind of has to join forces with one of the enemies to try and aim toward a common goal of defeating the big bad guy, and that individual, hopefully in defeating them, will end the war between her and this other guy's peoples. I wanted this book to either have gone two different ways for my own personal preferences. I either wanted it to really lean into the angst, or if it didn't lean on that basically at all and the romance was completely a subplot and it really explored her being conflicted about her faith and whether or not how she views it and how the other people are, if that's the right way just because that's how she's been taught her whole life. Are they truly evil? Or is it better to not rely on these mysterious figures that they don't actually know that much about? And the ultimate mission of killing the enemy, it just kind of felt silly to then sometimes occasionally have areas where we were like, oh, but like this bad guy that I'm with is so hot though. I think a good illustration of what I'm referring to is there are other side characters besides the main girl and one of the enemies who she's having to work alongside. there are 3 other side characters. I swear they could have not been in the book at all, and then the book would not have really changed, except for their names wouldn't have been mentioned. The point where I was talking to a friend of mine who has read this book, and I was like, I felt like this person just might as well have not even been in it. And they're like, I forgot that that person was in it. I think it would have been more compelling if our main character, okay, both those things that I'm talking about, leaning into the angst and then the weight of challenging your own faith, if she loses everything and then only has somebody from the other side that she has to kind of align herself with, then forcing herself to question her faith alongside fighting the feelings that she's starting to feel for this person would have made a lot more sense, because they're all that she has, as opposed to having other people but choosing to only spend time really showing the relationship with this person who she's supposed to hate and think is evil. I just didn't understand, like, if I hate somebody and I think they're evil, I'm probably not going to talk to them. I'm going to go talk to my pals that are also in my party. Moving on, though, to Bone Crier's Moon. I did not dislike this book, but I did not love this book because this is an enemies to lovers trope, and I just didn't really care about the enemies to lover part of the book. It follows this group of women who are farriers of the dead. When people die, they guide their souls into the afterlife. The ultimate, though, way that they prove to the gods and goddesses that they are willing to pursue this life that requires a lot of sacrifice is to kill their one true love. They don't know who their one true love is. They play this flute, and there's a siren song they play on a bridge, and then, like, a guy comes around and it was like, ha, I heard a pretty song. And then she's supposed to kill that guy, and then that will be her ultimate test, her trial to prove that she can be a farrier of the dead. And our main character is like, I can't wait to do that. So she's like, I'm going to kill that guy and I'm going to be the best farrier there is. And that's her goal, not realizing that the other main perspective is a fella whose dad died because of this very situation. So he has been his whole life trying to figure out the lore of these people and discovering more about them. And he's just been waiting to hear a song on a bridge so he can go kill a chick and avenge his dad. And that's what he goes to do, but things kind of go wrong. And then these two are stuck with each other. The farriers of the dead are supposed to lead the dead into the afterlife. And if they don't, then the dead spirits will start to feed off the energy of the living. And the only people who can really prevent this are the farriers of the dead. So it's kind of like well, it is sad to kill innocent fellas, but also if you don't, then the fate of the world is kind of at stake here. But like I said, I just did not care at all about the enemies to lovers part of this book. But if it sounds good to you, I would still recommend picking it up. Hopefully you will feel differently about that particular element. Last on this list would be 9th, Rain, a new hidden gem. I loved this. I described this in my book review, which I'll have linked down below so you can get more in-depth thoughts. I pitched this, as far as the characters go, as having a very eccentric, awesome, lovable, middle-aged lesbian black woman who is kind of like Indiana Jones. And then she has 2 companions, one of which is like a very vain Geralt of Rivia, and he's just like really into his looks, and he's kind of suave with the ladies, but also he's got those extra abilities the way Geralt does, where it makes him like a really good fighter, and people don't really like his people, and they're like, you're like a monster, and stuff like that. And then the other character being like if Vin from Mistborn was a witch, and the reason I say that is because this character's like kind of timid and unsure of everybody, but she's also super powerful. And it's like those 3 characters banding together to discover the mysteries of previous wars, of which nobody really knows very much about, but the reason that they are determined to find out about these previous wars is because they're pretty cyclical. They always kind of come back, and if they come back again, they're in some deep trouble because they have no idea how to fight the enemy that may come. They don't know much about this enemy, and the one thing that they do know is that this magical tree god would help them against the enemy, but that magical tree god is dead. So they're like, I hope nobody comes back, but if they do, uh-oh. It is a really interesting book, unlike anything I've ever read. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I have a whole in-depth non-spoiler book review that I'll link down below. I want a lot more people to read this. That's it for my before fall TBRs wrap up. Let me know if you've read any of these. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.